So hello, I am Alice Keeler. I live in Fresno, California, and I'm really excited to have with me here today Michael Haw in Australia, and he is Conqueror of the World. No, he is the Director of Digital Innovation at his school, and we go way back from when I was doing a visit in Australia, and I'm really honored and excited to have him here. So Michael, maybe you could tell a little more about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Michael. I'm the Director of Digital Innovation at my school here on the Gold Coast in Australia. As Alice said, we probably met about 6 years ago now and always kept up this really great professional relationship where we bounce ideas off each other and just sharing what we do. Really looking forward to today. And just learning from Alice is always amazing.
Well, I am here to learn from you today because I will say this is maybe not my best specialty. I'm sure I'm not bad at it, but I can't say that I really spent a lot of time around the definition of social emotional learning, SEL, or you said that in Australia they call it
Wellbeing.
So is there any difference between well-being and SEL?
Well, I think it's really looking around just the social, again, like, I think American actually has got a really good term. It's looking at the social aspects and the emotional aspects of a particular person and going through the weird situation that we're in right now in the world. What we're seeing in the school environment or across the school community is that we're being physically distanced from each other. So we really need to work on the social aspects and keep up our emotional well-being with each other.
So I feel like this is really hard on me. I am an extrovert. I'm an extreme extrovert. And if you think I am an extreme extrovert, you should meet my 7-year-old. And I just see him like laying around like a floppy fish. He's just not able to be around his friends and having a really tough time. And my oldest daughter, she is not so much the extrovert. So in some ways, like having some time to read a book or these things is nice, but it's still when you don't get to be with your friends every day, I can see that's hard on her also. So what kinds of things have you noticed from students in this situation?
Yeah, I think as an educator, what we're hearing at the moment is that a lot of students actually just miss their friends. There are amazing educators in the world that are working very hard in creating learning experiences for students to be undertaking at home, but it's the social interactions that students are really missing. And I think, as you and I were talking earlier, that's where having a communication platform like Microsoft Teams really encourage or provides a good environment and safe environment for students to interact with each other. You're on mute, Alice.
Well, it would help if I would do that. All right, and that's why we're having a practice, so thank you for that. I think one of my favorite things about Teams is really the fact that it is designed to interact, and the nature of the name, it's Teams. We're a team. And yeah, it was not designed necessarily for schools as a team, but it worked so well in other platforms, they brought it to the schools. And I love that the first thing that happens when you open up Microsoft Teams is that you're in these channels where you can have conversations, you can have private conversations, that you can support small groups, and that it's really designed around that collaboration, interaction, and social, which to me is what digital should be about. It's not about putting our stuff online. It should be more about students and teachers interacting and having a different experience with digital that I think in some ways can be more connected. So my master's degree was in educational media design and technology, and it was an online program, and I felt more connected to my teachers and my classmates than I do in most face-to-face situations. So in a lot of classes, you go to class, you sit in your desk and you take notes and you do a lot of things by yourself at your own seat. You're like, why are we together when we're not together? Whereas when you're in an online environment, it's less being talked at and more being asked to do interactive activities and do projects and things with your classmates that I think is just really creates a opportunity for a really rich learning environment. So Michael, you have some slides. Let's go ahead and take a look at those, and maybe you can introduce some of the ideas of social emotional learning.
Yeah, fantastic. So as Alice said, a lot of what I'm talking about is just giving an example of how Microsoft Teams and Microsoft products can be incorporated to create those social interactions, as well as providing teachers with tips on how to keep track or how to encourage students to really reflect on their emotional intelligence as well. So the easiest way to access Microsoft Teams is through teams.office.com using your organization's credential. You should be able to log into that.
Yeah, so for me, I usually use the browser, and I really like actually that I can be in Teams in 2 tabs. I'll duplicate it because I want to have the conversation tab, but then there's the assignments part that I want to be in. And so the app is really great. We are using the Microsoft Teams app. So if you are able to download Teams, I think that really enhances your experience, but I do really enjoy using the browser, and it's just simple to get to teams.office.com.
I was during our recent holidays here in Australia, I put together a couple of infographics to really support everyone across the school community in really thinking about what is this home learning, online learning, continuous learning, whatever you want to call it. What does it actually mean, and how do we summarize everything that we do? And across the board, the 4 themes that are really, I guess, summarized was to just keep everything simple. It's all about building relationships, having clear expectations, and also just be patient. A lot of things that what we're doing right now for everyone, whether it's for the teachers or for the parents or for the students, it's all new. So we really got to be patient with each other and be kind to each other, and really have that empathy hat on to think about, okay, let's say if I'm setting 6 hours of work for a particular student to do today, is that actually, is that too much really for them? So
I think
really
it's important to remember, just change is hard for people. I like to say that really most people can tolerate about 10% amount of change at any one time. And we've thrown at students, parents, and teachers a heck of a lot more than 10%. And so realizing we're all kind of in an overwhelmed state, and when you're overwhelmed and you're stressed, it's harder to learn and to really feel like you're able to figure things out sometimes. So I really loved your tip on, keep it simple.
Yeah, and I think for teachers, just to build in their practice too, to have those regular check-ins with their students, and for the students to have regular check-in with either the teachers or their peers, or even just a family member that they haven't spoken to. It's, again, using technology to really support what we've always wanted to do, and not think of technology being the center of everything, but rather thinking of technology to support what we do. I think that's really important. I think one of the other thing that has really sort of popped up for us was, okay, how do we actually keep track of a particular student, and again, thinking of different ways to build those relationships within the classroom. So I'll skip ahead. So what we did in our context was that different year levels or grade levels created a Microsoft team where we have different channels for different classes and different subgroups. We've purposely kept them as a private channel. So if you're in this example, if you're in 5AJ, only students in 5AJ would be having those conversations and interacting with each other within that channel. But there's also a general channel where the whole cohort, if you want to interact with other students in that cohort, you can as well.
So Michael, let me just interject for a second. I'm not sure that everyone knows what a channel is, and it's my opinion that channels are the best part of Microsoft Teams. So if you want to just give a word about how to make those and what they are.
Yeah, so a channels is a subgroup. So the best way to think about it, I think in this year 6 example here, we got all the students in our 6th grade in this particular team, but we have sub-channels or subgroups based on that would provide context around different conversations. Some of them are private, so only members in that particular channel can access that channel, and some are more broad or open where their content or conversations that it's open to everybody.
Yeah, thanks. I like to think about it as just like anything that you would want to have conversation around, which is a separate own conversation. So when you first get into Teams, what you're going to see is you have a general channel, and there's a tendency to just leave it there. But think about, you could have a channel for every group of students, and you can have a channel for every unit that you're doing, that's where you share out specific resources and presentations and collaboration documents specifically around that unit. And I think what is really great, as Michael has pointed out, is that, when students feel like they're in a whole class, they can kind of get lost. So putting them into a channel where it's just with a certain group of students. So the default would be that the channel is shared with everybody, but instead you're saying, okay, these 5 students, this is where they do some group work or collaboration, but just have an opportunity to get to know that group a little bit more intimately. Just kind of like in face-to-face class where you have your group of students physically sitting together, and you feel that community in this small pod. So it recreates that feeling online.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it in the head right there, where you're dividing students into smaller groups, and that's where we see the channel is really beneficial for that. That in some classes that we have, or some year levels, they've actually made even smaller channels, so little group of students can collaborate with each other, they can do group work, they have safe space where all their work is stored within the file section that no other students can access, and it's a really powerful way for groups to collaborate by creating channels. In this particular slide, I highlighted down the bottom here a button called Meet Now. That for us has been one of the most amazing buttons that we press, because for this particular class, 6CS, for instance, at 8:30 every morning.
The Meet Now button, is this the right slide?
Sorry?
I'm not seeing the Meet Now. Where is that?
Okay. Ooh, good question. Okay, so in a particular channel down the bottom, where you're typing your response or starting a new conversation, just below that is a video icon, where if you click on it, it starts a video call to everyone in a particular channel. So in a classroom context, if you want to have a check-in with everyone in a particular group or particular class in the morning, just to see how everyone's going in the morning, talk about the learning intentions for the day, that's a really easy to use icon where you click on that and it just do a video call with everybody in a particular channel. So
Okay,
that's
so
how
I think
we use it in our
it's
context.
subtle, so it's really far at the bottom of the screen. And one of the things I think it's really fun about Microsoft Teams is that it's really built to be that community space. So it allows you to add pictures and even has a GIFs element in there and a way to poll. I like the polling feature that's built in, but the meat now, you don't think about it, realizing that you can respond with a video just like you can respond with a meme, which is super powerful, but kind of hidden in there, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think another way that you can, if you want to use the video aspects of Microsoft Teams to connect with students is using the calendar feature, which on the left-hand side on the menu bar, if you was to click on the calendar and set up a new meeting, what that would do is set up a Teams video meeting at a particular time. So then that meeting would be incorporated into a student's calendar or a staff member's calendar. So we use that across our entire school for everyone to set up video meetings.
So I love the meeting features in Microsoft Teams. I feel like the video quality is really great. It's so quick and easy to connect, where some other platforms, I feel like I might be jumping through some hoops that I have to do, but because we're already all in the same team, the ability to connect that way is I think really one of my favorite features of Teams. And creating a meeting through the calendar, not only can I create a meeting with a small group of students, like to do some tutoring or just a check-in, but I can also publish it back to one of the channels. So think about this, that you have a channel with a small group of students, your group 1, you can create a meeting on the calendar and then share it to that channel, so then those students are invited into that meeting without you having to figure out how to invite some but not all of the students in the class.
Yeah, and by creating it in a calendar feature, you have a lot more flexibility and a lot more permission controls rather than just clicking on the Meet Now icon. And if you join into our next webinar on the more intermediate features of using the meeting feature, you'll find out some of them. So just to give you a bit of a teaser, you'll be able to lock things like removing the ability for other students to kick each other out, so or to mute each other and unmute each other. So some of those extra features or some of those extra options, if you create a meeting via the calendar function, it just provides a lot more control and flexibility for teachers.
So I've made some videos on my YouTube channel. If you go to alicekeeler.com/Microsoft, I have a button to all of my Microsoft videos that I have created, which right now is over 250 of them, and they're all very short. Some of them are seriously 14 seconds, 45-second videos where I just real quick to show you how to set those settings to prevent students from kicking each other out or muting. And basically what it is not having them as presenter status, but rather as an attendee.
Another way that we've incorporated with Microsoft Teams is actually, I'll back one step. One of the reasons why we like using Microsoft Teams as our central point of truth is that it connects with other programs and other systems, both within Microsoft and outside of Microsoft. What we in our senior school, what we started doing across all our classes is that we have an entry ticket and an exit ticket using Microsoft Forms to really gather some data around how students are traveling, around their social and emotional well-being.
Alice, you're on mute.
Michael? The video had dropped out a little bit, so if you're able to back up a little.
Okay, I'll back up back to my slide. So what we use Microsoft Form for is to create entry and exit tickets for each and every one of our classes. And what we find is that it creates really big data once a semester finishes to really unpack and follow the trend of a particular student or a cohort of students of how they're traveling. So a simple
Michael,
question, yeah.
Is it the same form the whole time?
Yeah, really good question, right? And for me, we were wrestling that exact question with a few teachers, and what we decided was that for now, we have a teacher create a form for each of their classes that they'll teach for the whole semester. Now, we thought the benefit of that is all the data is collated in a central form, so it will be easier to unpack that and to draw some information out of those data. If the forms are across multiple different forms, someone's got to really put together all the results at the end to even draw a graph. Now, looking at a future use, we're thinking, okay, well, why don't we use the same form for the entire school? Because that way, every result is timestamped. They've logged in, so we know exactly the user is who it is, and we can then filter and find out trends from a particular student or a cohort of students.
Can I ask a question? If you were to do this across the school, would type in their teacher's name, or are they selecting the teacher from a list, or putting in some sort of a code?
Yeah, good question. What do you recommend?
I do have a recommendation. My first recommendation is always do multiple choice as much as you can. If you want to sort and filter data, anytime you let kids type things, anyone, type things in, you're asking for some data errors. So my name is Keeler. I literally own AliceKeller.com because that is pretty common. The kids also call me Keeler and Keebler and whatever other typo they could possibly do. And so if you were to just ask them, like, who's your teacher, your whole data set would be just a mess. So I would do it as a drop-down list. Now, here's the problem. We have kids, so you know what they're going to do? Little stinkers. They'll just pick another teacher just for fun, right? So I would probably set up some sort of, it would be extensive to set it up initially, but branching where they have to type in a code, and then that would allow them to branch to the section for their teacher to pick their teacher from that list. So they could share the teacher codes across each other, but it's just a little tiny bit harder for them to select a different teacher. So that would be my tip.
I agree. Hey, this is why I love talking to you. I learn something new every time I talk to you. And I think for me, the more data is that are in a central location or one single location, you can always try to make sense of the data, especially if they are timestamped and you have, as you said, there are different values that are predefined. It's just so easy to track and make sense of it later on. So an example of, I'll just go back to this where we were before. An example, an exit ticket is very similar. So we're asking really simple question to students around what did they learn that lesson, and rate their understanding as well. So,
my gosh, again, I love that. I always wish that the assignments had built into it, like Amazon, like ratings. Like, how do I get better if I don't listen to feedback?
Correct. And, by asking really simple questions, it just provides an opportunity for students that it's not time consuming, but imagine the data that you can, the amount of sort of information you can gather over a long period of time if you were just from one or two questions, right? If a particular student's understanding was 99999 and all of a sudden the next week it's 5555,
right?
That's a really good spark to a conversation.
So that I'm a little torn. I love that you're keeping it simple and just a couple of questions. So, right, they do the exit ticket, and I'm just like, how are you feeling? Do you feel like this was a learning opportunity? And yeah, right. So I can do that temperature check. But I also know that reflection is really an essential part of the learning process. So I have a tendency that no matter what I do, I want students to somehow give me back, okay, what did you learn? What questions you have? I'll give them some sentence stems. Would you think it would be too much to have a question on that form that asks them, reflect on the lesson? What was the most salient point? What did you think was most important? What did someone else say that you wanted to say? What was a barrier, or what was helping you specifically? And if students reflect on what they've learned, they're recalling the information, getting it basically that second time. So just the practice of doing that is really good for learning. But I can see how that could possibly be too much as an exit ticket. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, and I think with any time you're asking students to reflect, it's almost always important to give them prompts on how to go about it. So, instead of how was your day, you can break it down to what are 2 things you learned and what's a question that you still have. So I think it's depending on the year levels, it's by providing them with scaffolding their learning or their reflective intelligence, the ability to reflect over a period of time. That's going to be important. You would hope that as they get older and older, by scaffolding that, they would know that, when you ask how was your day, they can subconsciously unpack how the day was based on what you've taught them in the past.
Yeah, I totally agree about the sentence stems. So when I have a class discussion, obviously not everyone can talk or would even participate in the same way. Like I talk a lot, and I'm going to talk over everybody, and some other people might have wanted to talk, but gosh, I just didn't let them. And so one of the ways that I can gauge participation is in that reflection piece at the end, where if they can articulate to me what the discussion was about, or what was the most important part, what was something that they wanted to say but couldn't because Alice was talking too much, it's those clues that I know they were actually paying attention. I saw on Twitter yesterday that someone tweeted out that their 10-year-old had created a video of themselves and put that as their background on Zoom, and then was off playing with their dog. And the mom comes over and is like, aren't you supposed to be in a meeting with your teacher? He's like, oh, I got this. I made a video background of myself so it looks like I'm there. Okay, so then how's that reflection going to go for you?
Yeah, and just looking across on the Q&A, one of the questions that we have was, what are the different types of responses that we can get in the Microsoft form? So I've got a sample one on here right now. You can select the different types are multiple choice, short and long responses, ratings, date. And another one that's often forgotten about is the file upload feature. You can upload up to files with up to the size of 1 gigabyte using this particular feature. So that for us has been really powerful in terms of students being able to submit
Just to give
a large videos.
Some perspective on how big a gigabyte is. If I do a 1-hour video call, the end of that video tends to be about a gigabyte in size. So that's a lot of video. I mean, that's a huge file. Most people usually wouldn't have any reason to exceed that.
Yep, totally agree. And I think more and more so as we're using multimodal, that's a word that's get used a lot in Australia, ways for students to showcase their learning using Microsoft Form, and for students to be able to articulate what they've learned and to submit what they've learned. We're starting to transition using that.
Alice, you're muted.
That's fantastic. I love forms. Forms is just such a great way to not only get all the information, but to get it all in one place, so I can make decisions based on not my feelings or what I perceive to happen a lot, but I have all of the data in one place that I can run a pivot table or a summary chart or these things. But let me just interject another way that you can do that with Microsoft Teams is when you create an assignment in Microsoft Teams, there is nothing prohibiting a student from turning in anything. So in the assignment, it does give them the option to add a file, and they can upload anything from their computer. So whether or not they want to submit their multimodal ways of demonstrating their learning through a form, they can also do it directly through Microsoft Teams in an assignment as well.
Yeah, there's so many things to talk about with Microsoft Teams. I think, like, you and I can sit here and talk all day around all the different features. The assignment feature is definitely one that we're slowly exploring, and the different integration that you can have with just that particular feature, it's amazing. So we use Turnitin as a plagiarism detection software, and it's got really deep integration with Microsoft Teams. So we're going to try to explore that in the next semester at our school.
Well, that's awesome. Do you have any more tips to share?
Yeah, and I think it brings back down to if I can show my my slides before the 3 infographics. I think the last little part around be patient really summed it up. So it's to think that things will be messy and it won't. Sometimes it just won't work as planned, but that means that it's just providing learning opportunities for everybody. When we're talking about currently, assignments will take twice as long to complete at home because generally parents don't really know the content, or they might not be their understanding on how to support or facilitate that learning at home. So we just need to be thinking and be patient and be kind to each other and also yourself. So I think, if there was a message at the very end, that would be my my main take.
Well, I think those are all really good tips, Michael, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to talk about them with us. And you put so much effort into putting these slides in advance. I know that we just decided to do this today. I was having a little chat with him, and he was telling me what he was working on and doing in terms of SEL with his class. And I'm like, oh, please come and chat this with me, because I would really love to hear and learn from you. So I learned a lot, and I just really appreciate your time and willingness to share. So thank you for joining. And what time is it in Australia?
It is now 1 p.m.
All right, so it's 8 p.m. for me.
Lunchtime.
Lunchtime. So I hope we can do this again. Thank you again, Michael. I just really appreciate you and your willingness to come and share. So thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you, Michael.